I used to think betrayal had a sound. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't glass breaking. It was the quiet ping of a text message while I was boarding a flight to New York. Is this listing authorized? That was the first line. The message was from a real estate agent I barely knew. Attached was a screenshot. My penthouse. My address. My photos. Listed for $2.3 million. And under seller contact. My mother. 1. The penthouse. I bought the penthouse at 32. 2 floors, floor-to-ceiling windows. A private rooftop terrace overlooking the skyline. It wasn't inherited. It wasn't gifted. I built a tech consulting firm from nothing after graduating with student loans and a chip on my shoulder. I worked 18-hour days while my friends got married and had bobbies. I missed holidays. I missed birthdays. But I never missed a payment. The day I signed closing papers, my mom cried. I'm just so proud, she said, hugging me tightly. I didn't realize then that pride and envy can share the same smile. 2. The golden child. I have a younger brother, Daniel. Daniel never worked 18-hour days. Daniel found himself every few years. Daniel invested in startups that failed and dated influencers who drained him. And every time he failed, my mom would sigh dramatically and say, he just needs one good opportunity. Apparently, that opportunity was my penthouse. I called her immediately after seeing the listing. She didn't answer. I called again. Voicemail. Then Daniel texted. Don't overreact. Mom's just exploring options. Exploring options. On my property. 3. Zillow doesn't lie. I pulled up the listing myself. It was real. Professional photos, a glowing description. Luxury 2-story penthouse in prime location. Motivated seller. Motivated seller. I wasn't selling. Worse, my mom had underpriced it. Comparable units in my building were going for $2.6M to $2.8M. She listed it at $2.03 for a quick sale. Quick for who? I canceled my trip and drove straight to the title company listed in the property details. 4. The red flag. The title officer, Ms. Green, looked calm, too calm. You're Olivia Carter, she asked. Yes. She turned her monitor toward me. That's what I thought. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She showed me the file. There was a notarized power of attorney document, supposedly signed by me, granting my mother authority to sell the property. The signature looked like mine. But it was. I didn't sign this, I said. Ms. Green nodded. We suspected as much. The notary seal number didn't match state records. The ID copy attached had a number slightly off from a valid format. They flagged it for fraud before any buyer funds moved. If they had, my penthouse could have legally transferred before I even landed in New York. I felt cold. My own mother forged my name. 5. The confrontation. I drove straight to my childhood home. She opened the door like nothing was wrong. Oh, honey, you're back already. I walked past her into the living room. Why is my penthouse listed for sale? Her smile stiffened. It's not like that. Then explain it. Daniel appeared from the kitchen, arms crossed. Mom was helping, he said. Helping. I laughed once. It sounded unhinged. By committing felony fraud. Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly. She always had that talent. You don't understand, she whispered. Daniel is in trouble. Of course he was. How much? I asked. Silence. How much? Daniel finally answered. About 1.8 million. I blinked. You're joking. It was an investment, he snapped. You wouldn't get it. I turned to my mom. So you thought the solution was to sell my home? You barely live there, she cried. You're always traveling, you could buy another one. There it was. In her mind, My success made it expendable. You forged my signature, I said quietly. She looked away. 6. The real plan. What they didn't know was this. I had already suspected something months earlier. Small things. My mail being forwarded without my request. My mom asking oddly specific questions about my mortgage balance. Daniel suddenly being overly interested in property values. So I'd quietly added a fraud alert and enhanced title monitoring to my property. That's why the title company flagged it so quickly. I wasn't naive. Just hopeful. Hopeful that I was wrong about them. 7. The police report. I didn't threaten. I didn't scream. I filed a police report. The officer who took my statement was professional, detached. Family fraud cases are unfortunately common, he said. Hearing that hurt more than I expected. Mom called me 27 times that night. I didn't answer. Daniel left a voicemail. You're really going to ruin Mom's life over paperwork. Paperwork. Forgery, attempted property theft, conspiracy. But sure, paperwork. 8. The fallout. Word spread quickly among extended family. Suddenly, I was the villain. She's your mother. Blood is thicker than money. She sacrificed everything for you. Sacrificed what? Emotional manipulation, selective love. I paid my own tuition. I paid off her credit card debt 5 years ago. I funded Daniel's first failed business. But boundaries, that was unforgivable. 9. The twist. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Ms. Green again. You should know something, she said. A buyer had already placed a full cash offer. No inspection contingency. That wasn't normal. She dug deeper. The buyer LLC was connected to one of Daniel's former investment partners. It wasn't just about selling the penthouse. They were planning to transfer it to someone within Daniel's circle at below market value. Then flip it. They weren't desperate. They were strategic. My mother wasn't just panicking. She was participating. 10. The courtroom. Charges were filed. My mom's attorney tried to paint her as confused, overwhelmed, misled by Daniel. Daniel tried to blame a consultant. But digital trails don't lie. Email drafts. IP addresses. Bank wires prepared in advance. The judge wasn't amused. In the end, they avoided prison through plea agreements, restitution terms, and heavy fines. But they now have felony records. And I have distance. 11. The rooftop. 6 months later, I stood on my rooftop terrace at sunset. The skyline glowed gold. For a moment I felt grief, not for the house. For the mother I thought I had. I used to think revenge meant destruction. But it doesn't. Sometimes revenge is refusing to be exploited. Sometimes revenge is documentation. Boundaries. Consequences. Daniel declared bankruptcy. His friends disappeared. Mom downsized to a small condo after legal fees drained her savings. She sent me a letter. Not an apology. A justification. I didn't respond. 12. The real victory. A year later, I refinanced the penthouse and pulled equity, not because I had to, but because I could. I invested in a women-led venture capital fund. I mentored young entrepreneurs who came from families that didn't believe in them. I built something stronger than real estate. Independence without guilt. People ask me sometimes, was it worth pressing charges? Yes. Because the moment I chose myself, everything changed. The penthouse was never the point. Respect was. And once you let someone steal your name on paper, they'll try to steal your identity in life. Not anymore. I thought the worst part was over after the court dates. I was wrong. Fraud leaves fingerprints long after the ink dries. 3 months after the plea deal, I received a certified letter, not from my mother, not from Daniel, from an attorney representing the LLC that had tried to buy my penthouse. They were suing me for interference with contractual relations. I read the sentence 3 times before it made sense. They were claiming that my false fraud allegations had caused them financial damages because they had acted in good faith. Good faith. On forged documents. I should have laughed. Instead, I felt something colder than anger. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was retaliation. 1. The setup. My lawyer, Adrian, didn't look surprised when I handed her the letter. "They're fishing," she said calmly, "trying to intimidate you into settling." I didn't do anything wrong. I know, but lawsuits don't require logic, they require money. The LLC had backing, real backing, investors who didn't like losing deals. Daniel's former partner, Marcus Hale, was listed as managing director. I had met Marcus once at a family barbecue. Polished smile, expensive watch, the kind of man who shook hands too firmly. Now he was trying to sue me into silence. Adrian leaned forward. "Do you want to settle?" "No. Even if it drags out." I thought about my mom crying in court, Daniel refusing to look at me, the voicemail calling it paperwork. "No," I repeated. 2. The discovery. Lawsuits are invasive. They request emails, financial statements, travel records. It felt like being audited for protecting my own property. But discovery cuts both ways. Marcus's LLC had to produce documents too. That's when we found it. An internal email thread from months before the listing went live. Subject line, Carter Property Transfer Strategy. Strategy. Not purchase, not offer. Transfer. The emails outlined everything. Obtain forged power of attorney. Secure quick cash buyer narrative. Close within 10 days. Immediate resale at market rate. Projected profit, $480,000. And Daniel was CC'd. So was my mother. I stared at the printouts in Adrian's office. They hadn't just tried to bail Daniel out. They had planned to profit from me. My chest felt hollow. "Can we use this?" I asked. Adrian smiled slowly. "Oh, absolutely." 3. The counterstrike. We filed a countersuit. Fraud conspiracy, civil damages, emotional distress. And because Marcus's firm had initiated litigation, we requested full financial disclosure. Investors don't like scandals. Within 2 weeks, 2 of Marcus's backers withdrew funding. By week 4, a business blog ran a quiet article about questionable property acquisition practices. Names weren't mentioned, but industry circles are small. Marcus called me directly after that. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. "You've made your point," he said smoothly. "My point? You stopped the sale. Your mother faced consequences. Why escalate?" I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the skyline through my window. "You sued me. You could have settled. You forged documents to steal my home." A pause. "That was Daniel's initiative. And you saw profit in it." Silence again. Then his voice hardened. "You're being emotional." That word. Emotional. As if logic belonged to men in tailored suits and not women protecting their assets. "I'm being precise," I replied. "There's a difference." 4. The crack. Pressure reveals fractures. Marcus's firm began hemorrhaging clients. Not because of me directly. Because trust once questioned becomes contagious. One of his employees submitted an anonymous complaint to the state real estate board. Apparently, my penthouse wasn't the first creative acquisition strategy. An investigation opened. That's when Marcus tried a different tactic. He offered a private meeting. Against my lawyer's advice, I agreed, but in a public restaurant with Adrian seated nearby. He arrived looking tired. Less polished. "You're destroying my company," he said. "You tried to steal my home. We can both walk away." "How?" "You drop the countersuit. I drop mine. We call it even." "Even?" I thought about my mother's signature, forged beneath mine. Daniel laughing at dinner. The assumption that I would absorb the loss, because I always had before. "No," I said softly. His jaw tightened. "What do you want?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside was a settlement proposal. He read it, his face paled. "You want me to admit fault publicly?" "Yes." "And pay damages?" "Yes." "You'll ruin me." I held his gaze. "You tried to ruin me first." 5. The breaking point. 2 weeks later, Marcus settled. Full admission of fraudulent intent, substantial financial damages, and cooperation with the ongoing investigation. His company dissolved within 6 months. Daniel tried to call me when the news broke. I didn't answer, but my mother showed up at my building. Security called upstairs before letting her in. I hesitated. Then I said yes. She looked smaller somehow. Less theatrical, less certain. "You've gone too far," she said quietly once we were seated in my living room. "Too far?" "Daniel is ruined. No one will hire him." "He ruined himself." "You didn't have to push." I stared at her. "You pushed first." She looked around the penthouse, the same way she had the day I bought it. But this time there was no pride. Only distance. "You've changed," she whispered. "No," I said. "I stopped allowing things." 6. The truth. For the first time, she didn't cry. Instead, she said something honest. "You were always so capable, so independent. I worried you didn't need me." I blinked. "That's why you tried to sell my home." I thought, if Daniel succeeded, if he finally stood on equal footing, maybe the balance would feel right again. Balance. She had tried to level us by cutting me down. "You could have just told me you felt that way," I said. I didn't know how. That was the closest thing to accountability I would ever get. Not an apology. An explanation. It wasn't enough to repair trust, but it explained the fracture. 7. The endgame. A year passed. I installed additional security systems, legal safeguards, title locks. Not out of fear. Out of wisdom. Daniel eventually took a mid-level operations job in another state. No startups, no investors, no shortcuts. Marcus relocated quietly, his license suspended pending review. My mother sends birthday cards now. Short messages, careful words. We meet occasionally in neutral places. There is civility, but not closeness. Trust, once sold, doesn't repurchase easily. 8. The rooftop again. Tonight, I'm back on the rooftop terrace. Wind in my hair. City lights stretching endlessly. The penthouse is still mine. But more importantly, so is my name. I think about the girl who bought this place years ago, believing success would secure love. She was wrong. Success exposes people. It tests loyalties. It reveals who sees you as family and who sees you as opportunity. I used to believe revenge meant winning loudly. Public humiliation, dramatic speeches. But real revenge, it's documentation. It's patience. It's refusing to shrink so others feel taller. Marcus lost his company. Daniel lost his illusion. My mother lost her narrative. And me. I gained clarity. The penthouse was never just real estate. It was proof. Proof that I could build something without permission. Proof that my signature meant something. And no one, no matter their last name, gets to forge that again. As the city hums below, my phone buzzes with a notification. Property value estimate updated. $2.9 million.